Hi there, I'm Lindsay Herman of Cake and Commerce, and today we're going to make gluten-free whoopie pies. First thing we do when we have all of our ingredients out, combine all of our dry ingredients together. We can also, while we're doing this, start our creaming method. This is a really basic whoopie pie. First thing we do is we're going to cream, after we mix our dry ingredients, we're going to cream our butter and our sugar together, and that's known as the creaming method. And it's a basis for a lot of muffins, some cakes, and in this case, our whoopie pies. If you are vegan or if you have a casein allergy, at this point you can substitute a trans fat-free margarine in place of the butter. I don't have an issue with casein, so I do use butter. We have in our dry ingredients cocoa, ground almond flour, I have some baking soda and baking powder, salt, guar gum, and I'm going to pause this for a moment to talk a little about guar gum because it is an unusual ingredient that not all gluten-free cooks use. Guar gum, or another popular gum is xanthan gum, which is derived from corn, are frequently used in gluten-free baking to give more lift to baked goods. And I use guar gum. A lot of gluten-free cooks don't. Some people have allergies, and so guar, which is a sort of a legume, it's related to bean. It isn't exactly a legume. It's from India. It does cause some discomfort for some people. I use it. I like the way it looks, and actually I'll show you what this finished pie will look like with it and without it. The whoopie pie with the guar gum has a really nice compact rise, and the whoopie pie that doesn't have guar gum is a little flat and spreads a lot more, and I kind of like the way it looks when it's more compact. So I use guar gum. I use tapioca flour for my starch, or for one of my starches. I also use buckwheat flour. This is light buckwheat flour. It's domestic. I like the way it tastes and the way it looks. It is a lot less hearty looking and tasting than traditional buckwheat, which is very dark. I think the flavor's a little stronger in the dark and a little more subtle in the light, and that's why I use it. I like to give everything a stir just to make sure that it's evenly mixed. The almond, which is now going all over the place and is a little hard, is packed in there. So I want to make sure it's sort of evenly mixed in. So going back to creaming, now that we're ready, we've got our dry ingredients right here. We've got some wet ingredients over here. Actually, our eggs are going to go in before the wet ingredients, and we're ready to mix. So at this point, I'm going to put in an egg and an egg yolk and just kind of let it go. And I'm going to mix it till they're completely combined. Okay. Now we're going to add about a third of our buttermilk mixture. Again, combining, running our processor till it's combined. And as I mentioned before, we don't really need to worry about overmixing because this is gluten-free and we're not going to be forming any gluten. The guar gum that we put in is going to help give it some structure, but we don't have to worry about a huge gluten formation. And also we want to check the paddle again because there may be some butter on the sides. So. Okay, again with the wet. Run it on slow or you'll get a bunch of buttermilk in your face. So at this point, our batter has pretty much come together. It's slightly stiff. It is not soft and runny. What I like to do is actually let it sit for a few minutes, anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, just to let it come together a little. Some of these flours really need an opportunity to absorb some of the moisture in it. So we've let the dough sit for 15 minutes and we've preheated the oven to 325 degrees convection or 350 in a standard oven. And now we're ready to scoop. Now I use I think this is a 1.5 ounce scoop. I like a smaller size whoopie pie, but if you like a big one, feel free to use a larger scoop than this. I keep some cold water nearby, and that's just to prevent it from getting really sticky on my scoop, because if you don't, after a while, it'll just be like a really ooey gooey mess. So we just kind of scoop it. And that's what we do. Now, at this point, if you decide that you don't want to bake these, you can actually freeze them. They freeze really well. I've frozen them for a couple weeks at a time. You can probably go a little longer, but they also can go right into the oven. So either way, if you're going to put them right into the oven, make sure you space them apart. They're not going to spread a ton, but they will spread. So I like to give about 1.25 lengths between them. And you don't need to put water on them every time, but it is a good idea every couple scoops to do it. So now while they're baking, we're going to put together a really quick butter-based icing. Now you don't need to use butter in your icing. Again, you can use coconut oil or a trans-fat-free margarine. I can eat butter again, so I'm going to make a butter-based icing. Start off with a 1/2 pound of butter, throw that into our mixer, and I'm going to start by putting about, I don't know, maybe 1/3 of what I have in here, and I start off with 4 cups. I figure I'm probably going to have to add more sugar to this to get the texture I'm looking for. And I'm just going to let it mix very slowly. If I don't, I'm going to get a face full of confectioner's sugar. Not my favorite thing. So, wish they had a slower button on here. Anyway, so already I'm getting some confectioner's sugar on me. And I need to stop it to get the butter off the paddle. So I'm going to get a little more sugar in there. And again, I'm going to scrape down the paddles. I just want to make sure all the butter gets integrated, because in making icing, there's really nothing more disgusting than getting a big bite of butter or margarine or coconut oil while you're eating your cupcake or whoopie pie or whatever it is that you're eating. It's gross. So often what I do while I'm making icing is I just kind of walk away. You don't need to sit over it and watch it carefully. It's going to come together. It's not very fussy. The other thing I like to throw in is just a touch of salt. If I forget to do salt early on when I'm mixing, I'll put together a little salt water, but usually very little water and a whole mess of salt and just a drop. Salt really brings out the flavor of other things or your other ingredients. And since I'm going to use a lot of vanilla, I really want that vanilla flavor being assertive, and salt just jacks it up. So at this point, it's really coming together, and I want to soften it up a bit. So I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla. I'm adding about just a little under a tablespoon, and I'm going to let it mix. Now, at this point, it would taste good, but it would be like getting a mouthful of butter. So I'm also going to add in a little bit of buttermilk. So I'm just going to put in a little. And there it is. So we have icing. So once our whoopie pies have come out of the oven and have cooled down, we're ready to ice them. Now, absolutely, they've got to be cool, or what you'll find is the icing will melt and kind of slide off the whoopie pie. So before I start icing, I actually pair the whoopie pies up just to make sure that the sizes are right. And because I've scooped them, they're pretty much the same size. There'll be slight variations if I had too much at the bottom or whatever. Also, while they were cooling, I took my icing and I put it in a piping bag. If you don't have a piping bag at home, it's not really a big deal. You can get a plastic bag, fill the bag, and then snip off the corner and then use that. I like the piping bag. I also like fitting a star tip on the end. Just looks a little decorative. So I'm just going to do a little pattern on the inside. Not really a big deal. And I make one little sandwich cookie and I put it on my platter. And then I just repeat that. It doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, if you don't have any kind of piping bag or plastic bag, you can just put a spoonful of icing in the middle and kind of squish it down. And then we can just set it out on a platter and we're ready to serve.